Alright, so for this project I have the Dialog Manager and Dialog Manager implementation in order to connect to various components and use Dialog to drive their actions. I modified the location spy component from the previous assignment so that it would be able to have certain actions that took both an effect and a condition. So the assignment said to do at least one. I ended up doing two. The first one I will demonstrate is an @action that causes the effect of raising an alert, and it can only happen if Alice needs a cat, and that has to be an utterance that is passed into the belief. And if the belief holds that Alice needs a cat, then there will be an alarm thrown that will print to the screen saying, "Oh no, Alice needs a cat." This is an alert, so it should be affected only by that condition. Then we have one other one. This one actually affects the physical robot, whereas the one on the bottom just throws an alert in the command line. This one actually causes the robot to start spinning, and this only happens if we believe that GLaDOS has deployed a turret, and therefore we're going to go in panic mode and start spinning the robot. So hopefully everything will go smoothly with the tests. The config files didn't work for me, so they didn't do what I wanted them to do, so I have to run everything separately. So let's start by running the registry. You can see any of the components being connected will be loaded into the registry on the left. So it turns out that you don't actually need to run your own belief component because the goal manager will actually start up a belief component on its own. So you'll actually see that pop up here. There were actually problems with both me and a couple other students if we started our own belief component, so the correct way to do it is to allow the goal manager to start up its own belief component. So next we run the simulated environment for the robot to exist in. Then we run the simulated robot. And then, let's see, so then we run our location spy, which held the actions that will give the robots capabilities like throwing an alarm or starting spinning in a circle. Then we run the Dialog Manager, which actually processes and adds the utterances to the belief component depending on what the content of the utterance was. And then just to make this easier, we're going to run a test component on the Dialog Manager so that we can just click on various functions to have them be executed. So it looks like that's still compiling, but we can right-click the goal manager, click on belief info to bring up the belief history so we can see how that changes as we run our test component. Okay, so for this first test, we only need to look at the command line output. So let's see. So test alarm false will say that Alice does not need a cat, and we should make sure that the alarm isn't thrown, even though we ask it to be thrown if she doesn't have a cat. So here we have Alice no longer needs a cat, so we don't have that belief, but we did submit the goal to raise the alert. If the alert was raised, then it would have shown up here, but it was not raised, and there's no belief that Alice needs a cat, so that is correct. So let's try testing the alarm on true, where we'll submit an utterance saying she does need a cat and see if the alarm is thrown. So you can see those show up here, Alice needs a cat, and then the alert is thrown properly when the utterance is input correctly. So alert level 100, Alice needs a cat, and then over here we got all of the correct things, such as the belief was correctly found. So that test was successful. Let's move on to the stuff that's in the XML file. So test statement, test question, and test instruct all test the belief of whether GLaDOS deployed a turret or not. So let's test it without the statement. So we didn't submit an utterance that says GLaDOS deploys a turret, so let's skip this. We go to test question. Now we ask, did that happen? No, the belief was not found. So if we send an instruction to start spinning, the robot will actually refuse because preconditions for action turnaround are not met. So if we pull up the window that has the robot in it, see where that window is, you can see that it's not spinning. So let's try that with our XML file next. So what I did was only test question and test instruct. I did not tell it that GLaDOS has deployed a turret. For the XML file that I'm going to run, instead of just clicking these last two, it's going to cause test statement, test question, and test instruct to run. So the robot should believe that GLaDOS has a turret and should start spinning. So to run the XML file, you have to right-click on the XML file that you have made, open the file, right-click on it up top, import it into the database, click on the database, click on Entity, Action, Script. You can right-click to edit the action, but it should be fine. You can see that it's going to run those 3 commands properly. And then you can run it as a one-time goal and leave the arguments the same, and the robot started spinning. So it looks like it worked. And let's just check the other outputs to make sure everything was consistent. Yeah, so it says, let's see. So yes, the belief was found. We do believe that GLaDOS deployed a turret because we submitted an utterance saying that that was so. So then when we submitted the goal to spin, then the robot correctly started spinning because that belief held. And if we look up here, we can see that that does appear in the belief history. So all of our tests have been successful so far. And there is our behavior driven by the dialog component.